The 10 Sentimo coin from 1968 belongs to the early years of this shift, making it historically significant. As one of the first coins to carry exclusively Filipino inscriptions, Francisco Baltazar (1788–1862), also known as Balagtas, was a revered Tagalog poet. His epic Florondia at Laura, 1838, is considered a masterpiece of Tagalog literature. Balagtas is often called the Prince of Tagalog poets and is celebrated for elevating Tagalog as a literary language at a time when Spanish dominated. Featuring his image on the 10 Sentimo coin symbolized a cultural renaissance. Coins became not just money, but carriers of Filipino history and identity. In the late 1960s, the Philippine peso was still relatively. The 10 Sentimo coin had real purchasing power. Jeepney fares in the late 1960s were around 10 to 15 centimos. Small snacks, candies, soft drinks, and glass bottles pan de sal often cost 5 to 10 centimos. This made the coin an essential everyday denomination. By contrast, today's 10 centimos is effectively obsolete due to inflation. Philippine coat of arms with 3 stars and a sun. National symbols: shield flanked by the American bald eagle and the Lion of Spain, representing colonial history. Banco Central ng Pilipinas, Central Bank of the Philippines. 10 centimos balances Filipino nationalism. Balagtas Filipino language inscriptions with acknowledgement of colonial past. Spain and USA heraldic symbols, minted mainly from 1967 to 1974, later replaced by the Flora and Fauna Series 1983, which again changed designs to showcase Philippine plants and animals. Because millions were produced, the 1968 issue is common among collectors. However, uncirculated coins from this year are treasured, especially for being one of the earliest Pilipino Series issues. Brilliant uncirculated USD. Many collectors seek the full set of the Pilipino Series, 1 Sentimo up to 1 peso in short. The 1968 10 Sentimo coin is more than just small change. It's a piece of cultural history, marking the Philippines' shift toward national identity, honoring a literary hero, and reflecting the economy and daily life of the 1960s. In 1968, the Philippines was under the leadership of President Ferdinand Marcos, elected 1965. The introduction of the Pilipino Series coins, 1967 to 1974, coincided with his administration's push to highlight Filipino culture and identity. Shifting inscriptions from English to Filipino was part of a nation-building strategy, stressing independence from colonial influence. Coins became tools of cultural education, circulating national heroes and Filipino words into everyday life. During the 1960s, the Philippine peso was still relatively strong. Pegged 10 Sentimo coin was 1/10 of a peso and still had practical buying power. Some common prices in the late 1960s: South jeepney fare 10 to 15 centimos, pan de sal bread rolls 1 centimo each, a bottle of soda 10 to 15 centimos. 10 centimos is almost valueless, but in 1968 it was an everyday necessity in circulation. The choice of Francisco Baltazar, 1788 to 1862, was not random. He was chosen for the 10 Sentimo denomination because he symbolized the power of the native Filipino language. His masterpiece Florondia at Laura, 1838, showed that Tagalog literature could rival Spanish works in depth and artistry. By honoring him on a coin, the government reminded citizens of the importance of Filipino heritage. Interestingly, putting a poet, not a warrior or politician, on a coin signified that cultural strength was equal to political strength. The 1968 design carried forward many colonial symbols but also embraced nationalism. Bust of Baltazar, facing left, Republica ng Pilipinas, year of issue 196. The national coat of arms, including this design, showed the Philippines was still balancing colonial past and national identity. The 1968 issue was mass-produced by the Banco Central ng Pilipinas and remained in use throughout the 1960s and 1970s. It circulated widely in markets, jeepneys, sari-sari stores, and schools. The 1980s, when inflation eroded its purchasing power, it was eventually withdrawn and replaced by the Flora and Fauna Series. 1983, where national plants and animals took the spotlight. The Pilipino Series, to which the 1968 10 Sentimo belonged, was a bridge between the English Series, 1958 to 1966, which used colonial language, the Flora and Fauna Series, 1983 to 1994, which embraced natural heritage. Because millions were minted, the 1968 issue is not rare, but its historical context makes it desirable in collections. The Central Bank of the Philippines was modernizing the nation's currency system to reflect national pride, historical heroes, and modernization. The 1 Piso coin of 1974 was part of the Bagong Lipunan ABL series, which was introduced starting in 1975, but some coins, bearing earlier years like 1974, were struck as part of the transitional phase. This series symbolized Marcos' vision of a new society during martial law. Features the portrait of José Rizal, the Philippine national hero, whose writings and martyrdom played a key role in the country's independence movement against Spain. The inscription around the portrait reads, Republica ng Pilipinas, Republic of the Philippines. The denomination 1 Piso is placed prominently. The year 1974 is struck below. Displays the coat of arms of the Philippines, symbolizing sovereignty and independence, inscribed with Central Bank of the Philippines in Filipino, along with the national motto, Isang Bansa Isang Diwa, One Nation One Spirit. Composition and specifications: metal, copper, nickel, weight around 14 grams, diameter 38 millimeters, large crown-sized coin, quite hefty compared to modern pesos. This large-size piso was meant to emphasize the importance of the currency during the 1970s, circulation and significance. The 1 Piso 1974 was heavily used in circulation, especially for larger purchases. Because of its size and weight, it was not always convenient for daily use, which eventually led to the downsizing of Piso coins in later years. The coin also marked a strong political statement under Marcos, as currency redesign was tied to the new society program. Common circulation strikes of the 1970 for 1 Piso are not rare and are usually worth only their face value or a small premium to collectors. However, uncirculated mint state examples, especially proof-like strikes, can fetch higher value. Coins with historical context, like those preserved during martial law, or with unique minting errors, are more desirable among collectors. In short, the 1970 for 1 Piso coin is not just money, but also a historical artifact representing the Philippines during a politically charged era. It features José Rizal as the enduring symbol of nationalism, while also embodying the Marcos government's push for the Bagong Lipunan program. Bagong Lipunan ABL coin series of the Philippines, which was issued under the regime of President Ferdinand A. Marcos. This coin is more than just money. It carries political, historical, and cultural symbolism that reflects the Philippines in the early 1980s. The coin features the bust of Andrés Bonifacio, the father of the Philippine Revolution, and one of the most important heroes in Philippine history. Bonifacio is best remembered for founding the Katipunan, the secret revolutionary society that ignited the 1896 revolution against Spanish rule. His image on the coin is a tribute to nationalism and the struggle for independence. Alongside Bonifacio's portrait, the inscription Republica ng Pilipinas and the year of minting, 1984, are present. The reverse side displays the coat of arms of the Philippines used during the Marcos administration. Below it appears the text, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Central Bank of the Philippines, also scribed as the denomination. Dalawang Piso de Pesos. The Piso coin of 1984 was introduced at a time when the Philippines was undergoing major political and economic challenges. By the early 1980s, the country was facing a debt crisis, rising inflation, and economic instability. President Marcos declared the continuation of his new society, Bagong Lipunan program, which emphasized nationalism, discipline, and economic reforms. Coins from the ABL series reflected this agenda, often featuring heroes of the Philippine Revolution to inspire unity and patriotism. This coin is notably large and heavy compared to present-day coins, which is why it stands out in collections. The late 1980s, after the People Power Revolution of 1986 and the ouster of Ferdinand Marcos, the Philippine coinage system was redesigned under President Corazon Aquino. The large 2 Piso coin of 1984 was eventually discontinued and replaced with smaller, lighter coins in the 1990s. However, the 1984 2 Piso remains significant because it was one of the last coins minted under Marcos before the fall of his regime. It honors Andrés Bonifacio, a symbol of Filipino courage and resistance. Its size and design make it a nostalgic piece for collectors and Filipinos who lived during that period. The 1984 Piso coin is considered a collectible item, especially in uncirculated or proof condition. Common circulated pieces are usually worth slightly more than. Its value is more historical than monetary. It represents a key chapter in the Philippines' political and economic history. 1980 for Philippine Piso coin is a large brass coin from the Bagong Lipunan series, featuring Andres Bonifacio. It symbolizes patriotism and revolution. While its issuance under the Marcos government links it to a period of both nationalism and political unrest. Today, it's the 25 Sentimo. Being a quarter of a peso has long played a symbolic role in Philippine currency. Although small in value, it represents a vital part of daily trade, transport, and basic transactions. Its history reflects the economic changes, political shifts, and the evolving coinage systems of the Philippines. By 2015, the 25 Sentimo had already undergone several transformations in design, composition, and symbolism. Pre-decimal influenced Spanish and American periods. During Spanish colonization, fractional coins existed but not in the modern decimal form. When the Americans introduced the decimal system in the early 1900s, the Philippine peso was divided into 100 centavos. After independence, the centavo became Sentimo. Post-independence coinage. 1950s-1970s. The Central Bank of the Philippines began minting its own coinage after 1949. The 25 centavo, Sentimo coins from the 1950s to 1970s were larger and made of nickel brass alloys, often bearing heroes and national symbols. The Flora and Fauna Series 1983-1994. This was the first time the 25 Sentimo became widely recognized by Filipinos in modern form. It featured the Philippine tarsier Tarsius siricta, symbolizing biodiversity, with the reverse carrying the national seal. The BSP Series 1995-2017. In 1995, the Banco Central ng Pilipinas, BSP, launched a new coin series with simpler designs and smaller sizes. The 25 Sentimo in this series was golden in color, featuring Gen. Juan Luna, the Filipino painter and revolutionary hero, on the obverse. The reverse carried the BSP seal. 2015 issue belongs to the BSP series 1995 to 2017, which was still in circulation before the new generation currency. NGC coin series was introduced in 2018. Displays the profile of Juan Luna, one of the most celebrated Filipino painters, known for his masterpiece Spoliarium. His inclusion honored not only his artistic achievements but also his role in inspiring Filipino nationalism during the late 19th century. Republica ng Pilipinas encircles the design, with the year 2015 placed at the bottom. Features the Banco Central ng Pilipinas BSP seal, emphasizing the authority of the central bank in maintaining the country's monetary system. The denomination, 25 Sentimo, is clearly marked. The coin was struck in brass-plated steel, giving it a golden color. Though lighter and smaller than earlier issues, it was round, lightweight, and practical for everyday use, particularly in jeepney fares, small market purchases, and school canteens. The 25 Sentimo denomination is not just a simple fraction of the peso. It reflects centuries of evolution in the Philippines' monetary system. During Spanish colonization 1565-1898, the Philippines used silver reales and Mexican pesos that circulated widely in Asia. Small fractional coins existed, but the decimal system was not yet standard. When the United States took control 1898-1946, the peso was officially decimalized. 100 centavos equaled 1 peso. This American influence laid the foundation for the modern Sentimo. After independence in 1946, the Philippines retained this decimal system but replaced the Spanish centavo with the Filipino Sentimo. The early post-war coins were larger and heavier. The 25 centavo coin of the 1958 series carried Juan Luna on the obverse for the first time, showing how he had long been associated with this denomination. This tradition was revived decades later in the 1995 BSP series, including the 2015 coin. The 1980s, the central bank wanted coins to reflect Philippine natural treasures. The Philippine tarsier appeared on the 25 Sentimo, symbolizing biodiversity. This was the last major redesign before Luna returned to the coin. 1993, the Banco Central ng Pilipinas, BSP, replaced the old central bank. 2 years later, the BSP introduced a new coin series. The 25 Sentimo once again honored Juan Luna with a simpler design and the BSP seal. These coins were light, smaller, and brass-colored. On the obverse, a national artist and revolutionary figure whose works like spoliarium inspired Filipinos in the late 19th century. BSP seal on the reverse, a reminder of the central bank's authority and the modernization of Philippine currency. Brass-bladed steel composition, a practical choice to keep production costs low while giving the coin a golden hue. This was also a transitional period, because only 3 years later, the BSP would introduce the new generation currency NGC coin series 2018 present. In that new series, Luna was replaced, and the 25 Sentimo featured the Cadman flower, symbolizing Philippine flora. Thus, the 2015 25 Sentimo represents the end of an era, the last years when Juan Luna was honored on the Philippine quarter peso. Juan Luna 1857 to 1899 was not only a painter, but also a patriot during the Spanish colonial period. His masterpiece Spoliarium depicted gladiators suffering in ancient Rome, but was interpreted by Filipinos as a symbol of colonial oppression. His inclusion on the 25 Sentimo is significant. It emphasizes that Philippine currency is not only for commerce, but also for national storytelling. The Bagong Lipunan and BL coin series, which was issued under the presidency of Ferdinand A. Marcos. This series was launched in the mid-1970s as part of a wider reform of the Philippine currency system, following the shift from the earlier Pilipino series that began in the 1960s. The introduction of the BL coins reflected not just economic changes but also political influence, as Marcos sought to imprint his regime's legacy on Philippine money. The 10 Sentimo denomination itself has deep roots in Philippine numismatics dating back to the American colonial era, when the centavo system was first adopted to align the Philippine currency with the US dollar. By the 1980s, the coin had become one of the smallest in face value, but it retained its place as an important fractional unit of the Philippine peso. 198 to 10. Sentimo features the portrait of Francisco Baltazar. Francisco Balagtas, the great Filipino poet and literary genius of the 19th century, known as the Prince of Tagalog poets. Balagtas symbolized the richness of Filipino language and culture. His works, especially Florandi at Laura, were essential in shaping Filipino identity, particularly during times of foreign influence and colonization. Placing his portrait on the coin underscored the value of culture and heritage. During a period of political change, around his portrait appears the inscription Republica ng Pilipinas, affirming national pride, and the coin's date, 1982, sits at the bottom, marking the year of mintage. The reverse side of the coin displays the national coat of arms of the Philippines, featuring the eagle, lion, and stars. Surrounding it is the inscription, Ng Bagong Lipunan, which was a slogan of Marcos' New Society movement, aimed at projecting the idea of reform, discipline, and modernization. Below the shield is the denomination, 10 Sentimo, clearly stating its value. 1980 to 10 Sentimo was struck in aluminum, which made it lightweight, inexpensive to produce, and resistant to corrosion. Its small size and lightness, however, meant it was often overlooked in everyday transactions, even during the time of its circulation. Despite its low monetary value, the coin had symbolic importance, reflecting how every unit of the peso contributed to the Philippine economy. The coin measured 17 millimeters in diameter and was one of the smallest circulating coins of its time. Because of its size, many Filipinos informally called it barya and often dismissed it as insignificant, but for small purchases in rural markets, it still played a role in daily trade. 1982 was significant in Philippine history, as it was a period of growing economic challenges. The country was experiencing rising foreign debt and inflation. Small denominations, like the 10 Sentimo, began to lose their purchasing power, but the 10 Sentimo coin of 1970 belongs to the second series of the Philippine peso coins introduced in the mid-1960s under the administration of President Ferdinand E. Marcos. This coin reflects not only monetary policy but also the cultural and national identity of the Philippines during a period of modernization and nation-building. Transition from the English series to the Filipino series. Before 1969, Philippine coins carried English inscriptions such as Central Bank of the Philippines. However, in the late 1960s, the government initiated a move toward greater use of the national language Filipino, now Filipino, as part of a broader cultural and political identity movement. The 10 Sentimo coin of 1970, therefore, bore the inscription Republica ng Pilipinas, replacing English wording. This change marked an important step in asserting national pride and independence, decades after the country gained freedom from American rule. The obverse of the 1970 10 Sentimo features Francisco Baltazar. Balagtas, the celebrated Filipino poet and author of Florondia at Laura. His inclusion symbolized the rich cultural and literary tradition of the Philippines. The coin bore the inscription, Francisco Baltazar, along with the denomination, 10 Sentimo. The reverse showed the coat of arms of the Philippines with Republica ng Pilipinas and the year 1970. The coat of arms featured the 3 stars and the sun, symbolizing Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, along with the American bald eagle and the lion of Spain, reminders of the country's colonial past. The 1970s were a turbulent time for the Philippine economy. The peso had been pegged to the US dollar for decades, but in 1970, the Philippines experienced a major peso devaluation. Inflation and political instability affected the economy, making small denomination coins like the 10 Sentimo crucial for everyday use among ordinary Filipinos. The 10 Sentimo coin circulated widely in markets, sari-sari stores, jeepney fairs, and local trade, serving as an accessible unit of value in a time when every centavo mattered. The choice of Francisco Baltazar was deliberate. By placing him on the coin, the government reinforced the importance of the Filipino language and literature. His writings inspired patriotism, moral lessons, and love for the country. The coin thus became both a medium of exchange and a miniature cultural emblem, carried in people's pockets. The 1970 10 Sentimo coin remained in circulation for many years, even after later coinage reforms. It was part of daily life throughout the 1970s and into the 1980s. Over time, however, inflation reduced its purchasing power, and by the late 20th century, it became practically obsolete. Collectors, the 197010 Sentimo coin has modest but meaningful value, circulated condition, often worth only a few pesos due to its high mintage and availability. Uncirculated, mint condition, can fetch higher prices, sometimes up to a few dollars for pristine examples, especially if graded. Historical value. The Philippine peso has been divided into 100 centavos or centimo in Filipino. The term centimo was officially adopted in the 1960s when the Philippines shifted its coinage inscriptions from English to Filipino. Before that, coins bore the name centavo, a Spanish-derived term used since the Spanish colonial era. 197010 Sentimo coin belongs to what is called the Pilipino Series of Philippine coins, which was introduced in 1967. This was the first complete coin series to use the Filipino language on its inscriptions, replacing English that had been in use since the American period. This change reflected the growing movement for national identity and the promotion of the Filipino language under President Ferdinand E. Marcos. 1970 was significant in Philippine history. It was the period of the first quarter storm, a series of student-led protests against the Marcos administration. The economy was also facing challenges, including a peso devaluation in early 1970, which weakened the peso against the US dollar for the first time since independence. This made small denomination coins like the 10 Sentimo more important in daily life for ordinary Filipinos. 10 Sentimo featured Francisco Baltazar 1788-1860, one of the greatest Filipino poets and the author of the epic poem Florondia at Laura. Placing Balagtas on the coin was intentional. It tied national currency to the Filipino language and literature. His works were symbolic of cultural pride and identity, making him the perfect figure for a coin that marked the linguistic shift from English to Filipino. The reverse of the coin bore the coat of arms of the Philippines, showing the 3 stars and the sun representing Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, the American bald eagle representing ties to the United States, and the Lion of Castile and Leon representing Spanish influence. 1970. These symbols reminded Filipinos of their colonial past, but also of their independent identity as a republic. 1970. The Philippine peso was devalued from P3.90 to P6.43 per US dollar, triggering inflation. As prices rose, the purchasing power of coins like the 10 Sentimo declined. What could once buy small goods became almost negligible by the late 1970. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas oversaw the minting of the 10 Sentimo 1970 coin. At the time, coins were produced mainly by the Royal Mint in London and later by other international mints until the BSP established stronger local minting capabilities. 1970 10 Sentimo. Coin is important because it reflects the Filipinization movement. By using the word Sentimo and honoring Francisco Baltazar, the government was embedding Filipino culture into everyday life. Coins, which passed through every hand in the nation, became symbols of national pride. The coin remained in circulation throughout the 1970s and 1980s, although by the 1990s, its practical use had nearly disappeared due to inflation. Eventually, it was demonetized along with the rest of the Pilipino series.